Well, hello again, everyone. It's good to be with you again. My name is Revd Steve Morgan, and I'm an assistant minister who's ministering in St Anne's Church in Chasetown. Well, here we are, over a week on now from certain events that happened in the United States, and I've seen and witnessed in our own country and in other countries the effects that that event has had. And it's caused me, like others, to reflect again on stories in Scripture and to look at the effect that people who've had power have had throughout history. And it's interesting to note the difference, I believe, between people who've had power and people of faith who God has used and who have earned the right to be heard through actions and words of authority. We can look at many famous and well-known stories in Scripture. For example, we could say that Pharaoh had the power, but Moses had the authority. We can see the stories in the book of Daniel about Nebuchadnezzar having the power, but Daniel having the authority. And then we can see in the Gospels King Herod having the power, but John the Baptist had the authority. And most importantly for us, we see at the end of Jesus' earthly life that Pilate had the power, but Jesus had the authority. And thinking again in recent times, what's happening now in society, thinking of an example from the 1960s and the civil rights movement, the fact that the US government had the power, but Martin Luther King had the authority. And so I think we can see through these examples that if we want to change the world, especially as Christians, if we want to change the world for Christ, we're not going to achieve our aims for God by using power and force as some people in the world are currently trying to do. But rather, we need to speak and act with authority. And in doing so, we need to earn the right to be heard. For the abuse of power and the use of force can change people. And as we're currently witnessing, as I said, in society and across the world today, even the best intentioned people can be perverted by this. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Be careful when you are fighting a dragon, lest you become a dragon yourself." And so we're not going to eliminate abusive powers and injustices in society by using power and force ourselves, as we will only end up becoming like the abusive systems of injustice and power that we seek to challenge. Indeed, when reflecting on his 27 years in prison after his movement failed to bring about significant change in South Africa by the use of force, Nelson Mandela said that he was a very angry young man who was not ready to forgive. And as Commander-in-Chief of the armed wing of his movement, he said he was ready to use violence and force to achieve his aims. But during his time in jail, he explained that he'd suffered the loss of his mother, his son. He'd also had prostate surgery and he'd developed TB. However, he also said that over this time, he grew and developed empathy and came to cherish the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all people could seek to live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. And so, upon his release from jail, Nelson Mandela said that this is an ideal which he hoped to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it was an ideal he was prepared to die for through peaceful means. 27 years in prison gave Nelson Mandela the authority and had earned him the right to say to his people, "Let us try to forgive and move forward." from which he was able to go on to become president of South Africa and was able to bring about real and lasting change. In conclusion, for me, the words of the prophet Micah resonate with much of the life of Nelson Mandela and others in history I've mentioned, like Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as those in Scripture. For Micah stated that God requires us to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. And so, as we go about our lives, let us consider how we use power and force in our relationships, in our dealings with other people, and help us to consider again the message in Scripture and the message of Nelson Mandela and Dr. Martin Luther King by earning the right to be heard through our actions and gaining and using authority to bring about change instead. For then we are truly following the will of God. Amen.